Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Steve Weigel, tracking Hurricane Dorian, a powerful Category 5 hurricane. The new advisory just in from the National Hurricane Center. This hurricane is moving through the Bahamas now and headed toward the coastline of South Florida the next 24 to 48 hours. So the new forecast track has just come in from the Hurricane Center. It's about 160 miles off the coast. It is really an incredible hurricane, the strongest ever recorded to move through the Bahamas, and it is moving west at the present time. They're at 163 as far as the distance from our coastline, and the hurricane force wind stretching out about 30 miles from the center. It is a massive hurricane. Here's the latest coordinates, the latest advisory coming in. This will update, I believe, in a minute or two, because this is at 4 p.m., 185, and moving west at 7, with the forecast track taking it as a Category 5 all along the northern tip of Grand Bahama, and then that turn toward the northwest after that as it moves up the coastline. And a hurricane warning now is in effect. I want to show you some of those watches and warnings. We have a hurricane watch for the entire viewing area along the coastline, and now a hurricane warning has been issued from Jupiter all the way up past Sebastian. So that is new in the 5 p.m. advisory. And that is obviously a big concern, because that means there is the threat for hurricane force winds along the coastline, and we have the potential for hurricane force winds south, Jupiter south, along coastal Palm Beach County. Also a tropical storm warning in effect. That is across the area too. Tropical storm watch for the inland areas around the lake. And that continues. Now there's the earlier hurricane warning. That is for the coastal waters. But now, as of 5 p.m., we have that hurricane warning from Jupiter up through our entire viewing area up to the north. And that is, in fact, it goes, I believe, all the way to Volusia County. So that is a hurricane warning for parts of South and Central Florida. So that is a significant change from earlier. And then a storm surge watch, that is in effect along the coastline too. Not only the Treasure Coast, but Palm Beach County. It's just that the different Weather Service offices display it differently on the map. It is along the coastline of Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast. It's just in different highlighted detail across the Treasure Coast. All right, here's the forecast track for this, and of course it makes that big turn toward the northwest, but it is very, very close to our coastline. So we are not in any way in the clear with this one, not even close, and we have to watch it because it is expected to slow down, almost stall on Monday around West End and Grand Bahama. That is about 60 miles off our coastline, and that is the main concern here, that this storm stalls and sits there, and then there's more uncertainty as to exactly where its future track is after that. And if you're just tuning in from last night or early this morning, you can see that the tropical storm force wind field is getting a little farther inland across not only Palm Beach County, but the Treasure Coast. And the timeline for this is into Monday and into Tuesday as it continues to pull up the coastline. So it is expected to make that turn toward the northwest. But at this time, it is so close to our area that we will feel tropical storm force winds beginning overnight. In fact, some of those wind gusts in some of the outer feeder bands are already possible in spots. All right, there's the 5 p.m. advisory. So this just came out. It's now slowing down even more. So it's west at 5 miles an hour. Anything less is pretty much considered drifting. And that is obviously a concern. So this is slowing down. It just moved through Marsh Harbor and the Abacos and the Bahamas, and the reports and the video and the photos coming out of that area are just absolutely incredible. Destruction up and down that small island chain. And that track you can see as a Category 5 right up into tomorrow. In fact, I can give you a little bit better view here. All right, so 185 mile an hour winds, the track taking it with a turn. This is Monday. This happens a little bit later now, but it is expected to happen Monday with that turn toward the northwest around the noon hour, late morning, early afternoon, and then turning and weakening at the same time, becoming a Category 4. Still in the error cone here for a good part of Palm Beach County and most of the Treasure Coast. It looks like, just kind of eyeballing it, because this is the first time I've seen it, it looks like maybe that cone has shifted a little farther to the north. But remember, yesterday and the day before it did the same thing, and then it backed up, and we got into this morning almost the entire area of Palm Beach County in that error cone. So it certainly could move back to the west a little bit too. And even it's really irrelevant if it does or it doesn't. because a track more toward the west and the south would bring us into some very strong damaging winds, and that's what we don't want to see. So the down the line track is the most likely track, but any shift, I mean any shift, by 10, 20, 25 miles, let's say this hurricane drifts a little farther west, 2 to 3 hours or 4 hours, you're looking at, there's your 20-mile difference before it makes that turn, and it's 20 miles closer. And we are in, instead of tropical storm force winds, we are in hurricane force winds, and that's a situation that we don't want to see here. So that's what we have to watch. This isn't a Category 1 hurricane moving through the Bahamas that we expect to turn. This is 185 miles an hour, and at this point right here, it is 60 miles away from the coastline. That is a serious situation, so be very, very just keep up to date with all the forecast tracks, and you can see that turn is still expected to move up the coast into Monday, really Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I want to bring in Kelly and Michael.
Steve, clarify for us and for all of you at home, hurricane force winds, given all the caveats and what you've said, the headline that all of us lay people keep hearing about is 185 miles an hour, but talk about how far out those winds go, and when we speak hurricane force winds on current projections, what does that mean in terms of miles per hour as you would see it right now for us?
You mean as it moves closer to us,
Yeah, as it moves closer. Are we talking, 74 to 80 here that we'd get?
Yeah, we'd be on the outer fringes of those hurricanes. So tropical storm, in fact, let me bring up a map here. Let me flip ahead a little bit. And I have the wind profile map. So this gives you a really good idea of when we start to encounter that wind field. Here it is here. So the tropical storm force winds are showing up in yellow. They're in our area overnight and tomorrow, and then as the storm turns, that entire wind field of 40 to 50, maybe even 60 mile an hour winds. In fact, these winds here, this more of an orange color, that's pretty much 60 to 70 miles an hour. And then when you get in the red area, that is our hurricane force sustained wind. So that's 74 miles an hour or stronger. So on the current track, you can see how close that red area with 70 to 80, potentially 90 mile an hour winds gets to the coastline before it moves away. Very similar to what we saw in Hurricane Matthew a few years ago. Matthew was 35 miles off Vero Beach at one point, and we had recorded sustained winds there of 74 miles an hour. So they got in that zone of hurricane force winds. On the current track, I expect most of the area will stay out of that, and that's why we have the hurricane watch. There's a potential, but it's on the current track and position, it should stay just offshore. But as I said, any shift, I mean any shift, 10, 15, 20 miles, and this is a 185 mile an hour hurricane, quite a bit closer to Florida. It is razor thin at this point, and we all know the computer models, their guidance. They are not. This is not set in stone. This could easily change and shift more toward the west. We've seen it the last 24 hours. We've seen a shift, not much, but we've seen a little bit of a shift toward the west in the last 2 to 3 track updates.
So present course right now. Tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, when's the first effect?
Well, we're already starting to see the sort of indirectly related bands starting to work into our area, but things really start to pick up into tomorrow morning and into the afternoon, and then as we get into tomorrow night, I would expect the peak weather arriving along our coastline tomorrow night and into Tuesday. So this timeline here, this is Tuesday at noon. You can see the stronger winds. They've moved from northern Palm Beach County, so this is, let's say 50. I hate to estimate because some of these feeder bands will have stronger winds, some of them will have weaker winds, but I would say 50 to 60 mile an hour winds potentially right along the coastline, moving from northern Palm Beach County in along the Treasure Coast and then working up the coastline. So that's noon on Tuesday, but this map advances a little bit too fast, and it is also in this area along coastal Palm Beach County late Monday and early Tuesday.
Steve, how far out from the core do the fiercest winds that we've all been hearing about today, the 185 mile an hour winds, from the center of the storm, how far out do they extend?
Well, the eye is about 25 miles wide. And let me bring up that loop because this is, I've been here a long time, covered a lot of hurricanes. I cannot say I've seen, other than maybe Hurricane Floyd. I mean, Matthew made a close call to us, but this is really and think about this, tomorrow this eye is going to be right there. We are going to be on the outer edges. The satellite loop is amazing now. Tomorrow morning, it is really going to be incredible to see that storm so close to us. Now, the fiercest winds, those 185, that's right along the northern eye wall. So that would be right in this area here, more than likely, and that's where the hurricane hunters will sample the atmosphere. Those are where in Hurricane Andrew, Naranja Lakes, Country Walk, and the Homestead area, that's the area that got the most significant damage, right along that northern eye wall. As you head out, it drops off fairly quickly. I mean, even I would say 30, 40 miles out, you're looking at winds that are borderline, certainly 40 and 50, you're looking at sustained winds that are borderline hurricane strength.
Why every mile counts. The fiercest winds, if we get that little bit of a break, it helps us, comes closer, we have bigger concerns.
Yes, absolutely. So as we've been saying, and we've been working all weekend, and I know a lot of people at home were watching us yesterday thinking, well, it's turning, it's not a concern to me. And I think the watches started to pop up this morning, and now we have a hurricane warning for Jupiter North. And a lot of people are now starting to take this seriously. A lot of people, I think, feel like the track has completely changed. That's not true. The track has adjusted about 10 to 15 miles to the west, but that is how razor thin this storm comes to South Florida, and that's why we want everyone to be prepared. And as I said at the top, this is not a Category 1 hurricane. This is not a tropical storm. This is 185 mile an hour winds. The wind gusts are well over 200 miles an hour in this storm, and it is within 60 miles of our coastline tomorrow. So everyone should be taking this seriously. If you have hurricane shutters, put them up now. If you put them up and then took them down, I'm getting reports of that because you felt the storm was going to turn, and not put them back up. There's a hurricane warning now. The entire area has hurricane watch and hurricane warning for the Treasure Coast. So get ready if you haven't already, because one little shift, a 2 to 3 to 4 hour direction toward the west a little farther, and this is a whole different ball game for it. It's going to be bad weather nonetheless, but a little shift toward the west, and this is a very serious situation for us.